In this video, we will make the game playable by updating the state of the React application. As you can see, when I click on a card and match it with another card, those cards will stay visible in the UI, and it will continue doing that until we've matched all of them. In this video, we'll be using the useEffect hook, so let's first go ahead and import it up here at the top. Now let's add some additional state to this application. We have an interesting challenge here where the user will need to click 2 times in succession, and we'll need to determine if those 2 clicks were on the same image. Naturally, we will create 2 different pieces of state here for pick 1 and pick 2, which will initially be null. Now when determining if we have a match, we'll want to add a slight delay to the application and disable the UI so the player can't just go around and click everything to quickly get all the matches. And that's what our disabled state will allow us to do. And lastly, we have wins, which will be incremented by 1 every time the user finds all the matches on the board. And in the next video, we will use that data to show a badge on the PWA. Now, the actual user interaction is fairly easy to handle here. We only need one click handler function here to run some code whenever the user clicks on a card. When a click occurs, we'll first see if clicking is disabled, and if not, we'll either set pick 1 or pick 2. And the way we figure out which one to pick is to see if pick 1 has already been set. If not, then we'll set the value to pick 2. Now we can think of the sequence of 2 clicks together as a turn, and when a turn happens and is finished, we'll also want to handle it by setting the pick back to null and the disabled state back to false. Now that we have some state set up, let's go into the JSX and add it to the card component. A card will be considered selected if the card equals pick 1, or it equals pick 2, or it's been matched. Remember, when selected is true, it will apply the selected CSS class, which in turn will trigger the CSS animations and show the actual logo that we want in the UI. And now the question becomes, how do we update the state when the user clicks on a pick? In this case, we're going to handle that logic with the useEffect hook. The effect will set a timeout, which we'll set up as a variable right now called pickTimer, and then we'll add dependencies for the cards pick 1 and pick 2. That means that whenever the state changes on any of those values, this effect will run. This effect will be used to handle the match between 2 cards, and that means we only want to run it if pick 1 and pick 2 have been defined. We'll need to nest another conditional inside of that will check to see if pick 1 image equals pick 2 image, in which case the player has made a match. When a match is made, we'll need to update the cards array to put a match property on the 2 cards that have been matched. We can do that with the map function, and if the card image equals pick 1 image, then we can return that card along with the match property set to true. If that's not one of the matches, then we can simply return the card. Now, the other possibility is that the user picked 2 cards that do not match, in which case we'll set the disabled property to true and then use setTimeout to define a 1000 millisecond timeout that will delay calling handle turn. Again, that prevents the user from endlessly clicking to give us a more playable game. As a final touch, we can add some teardown logic here to also return a function that will clear the timeout to ensure that we don't have any conflicting timeouts between renders. And now the game is able to update the state of the cards whenever a match is made. But the other change we need to be aware of is when the user gets all the matches on the board, because at that point we want to reset the game and start over. For that logic, we can set up a different side effect, but notably it will not run when the picks change, unlike the other effect. You can use the useEffect hook multiple times in the same component to handle different side effects, but when things get too complicated, it's usually a good idea to extract that logic into a custom hook. In any case, to determine if the user has won the game, we will first filter out all the cards that have not been matched. We can then set up a conditional that will check the card's length along with the win length, which should be less than 1 if the user has won the game. When a win occurs, we can increment the value by 1, then we can reset the game and shuffle the cards once again. That takes care of the main game logic. However, we might also want to give the user a way to reset the entire game if they want to start over from scratch. To handle that, I'm creating a header component in the components directory. It will take a function as a prop to reset the game, as well as the current number of wins. We can then make use of those values in the JSX for the UI. And one cool added touch here is that we can automatically update the title of the document in the browser using a side effect. Once again, we can bring in the useEffect hook and update the document title with the current number of wins whenever the wins value changes. Now, if we go back into the app component, we can define a new function called handleNewGame that will set the wins back to 0 and reshuffle the cards. In the JSX, we then declare the header component and pass it the required props. And now we have a playable game, but we can still take things to the next level by turning this into a progressive web app, and that's exactly what we'll do in the next video.